My hallelujah belongs to you. My hallelujah belongs to you. Ooh, my hallelujah belongs to you. Hold on. My hallelujah belongs to you. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. My hallelujah belongs to you. 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 Everything that I have, oh God, it belongs to you. My hallelujah belongs to you. Oh, you deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it, God. You deserve it. Everything I have, God. You deserve it. Oh, you deserve it. All of the glory belongs to you. All of the glory belongs to you, oh God. All of the glory belongs to you. Everything that you have, oh God. All of the glory belongs to you. Everything that we have, oh God. All of the glory belongs to you. Oh, you deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve it. Everything, oh God. You deserve it. Oh, hallelujah. 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 All the glory. All the glory. All the honor. All the honor. All the praise. All the praise. You deserve it. Everything we have, oh God. You deserve it. We give it all to you, God. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You deserve it. Oh, hallelujah. 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 Oh, you deserve it. You deserve it. Hallelujah. 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 All the glory. All the glory. All the honor. All the honor. All the praise. All the praise. You deserve it. You deserve it. We magnify you, oh God. You deserve it. We glorify your name, oh God. We lift you high today, God. You deserve it. We love you, oh God. You deserve it. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You deserve it. We magnify your name, oh God. You deserve it. We love you, yes we do. You deserve it. Hallelujah. You deserve it. You know, just sing along with the song. Just simply says amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. So amazing. So amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing. So amazing.
So amazing.
You caused the sun to move to shine. I'm so glad you're mine. Lord, I'm so glad you're mine. We stand in awe of you. Amazed at the things you do. You're holy. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain for me. We stand in awe of you. Amazed
at the things you do.
You're holy. Worthy
is the Lamb
who was slain for me. Oh, no one compares
to you.
Come on and put your hands together. No one compares.
To you.
I just searched the land, couldn't find no one.
No one compares to you.
Oh,
You're amazing.
you're amazing.
You're amazing.
No one compares.
No one compares to you.
No one compares.
No one compares to you.
Oh Lord, no one compares.
No one compares to you.
Oh, say you're amazing.
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 Jesus went.
You're amazing.
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 Jesus went
You're
to
amazing.
Calvary
You're
to
amazing.
save a wretch like me.
You're amazing.
That's not how
You're amazing.
story ends.
You're
For
amazing.
in 3 days
You're amazing.
he rose again.
You're
He
amazing.
rose with the power to heal,
You're amazing.
power to save.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing, God.
You're amazing.
Oh, I love you.
You're amazing.
Oh, I praise you.
You're amazing.
Oh, I love you.
You're amazing.
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 Oh, Lord, I love you.
You're
I
amazing.
give you glory.
You're
I
amazing.
give you honor.
You're
I
amazing.
give you praise.
You're amazing.
'Cause you're amazing.
You're amazing.
Oh, you're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
Oh, Lord, you're amazing.
You're amazing.
That's why I love you.
You're amazing.
'Cause you first loved me.
You're amazing.
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 Oh, we love you.
You're amazing.
Lord, we praise you.
You're amazing.
We lift you higher.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing, God.
You're amazing.
Lord, you're amazing, God.
You're amazing.
Save my soul
You're
from
amazing.
burning hell.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
One more time, won't you put your hands together and give God praise for our worship team blessing us. And if you would, turn with me to Genesis chapter 1. And we are going to begin reading at verse number 20. My brothers and sisters, I was shopping the other day, and I almost picked up. I had it in my hands, and I set it down. I almost picked up a 1,000-piece puzzle because I love 1,000-piece puzzles. Those are they're so great to get together, start with all the pieces that are just spread out over the table, and then begin to work and fill in the picture that you have in front of you and put all of the pieces together. And I had it in my hand. I was on my way to the checkout, and then I remembered I really don't love 1,000-piece puzzles. I love the idea of them. They are a great idea. I actually hate them when they're on my table because I think it's going to take a lot less time than it actually takes to put the puzzle together. I think if I just block out maybe an hour and a half, no more than 2 hours on an afternoon, I'll sit and I'll put the entire puzzle together, and it will be great. I feel like I have accomplished something. It will be great downtime. I think it won't take that long to put the puzzle together, but once I spread the pieces out and I realize that 2 hours in, I've just gotten the edges around and put together, I realize it's going to take a lot longer than I originally thought, and then I begin to hate it. I hate it because I'm already too far in it to back out. I've got the edges together and I know I need to finish it. I hate it because it's going to sit on my table for the next 6 months, because every day I'm going to come in and look at it and say I'm going to put some more pieces together, but I never do because there's so many other things that consume my time. I hate it because when I finally sit down and put some other time into it, once the edges get set, the rest of the puzzle is maddeningly difficult to put together, and then I want to force pieces together that don't fit, and then it seems like they have to leave out about 15 or 20 pieces just to drive me crazy. I love the idea of it, but I hate putting it together. I bring that up, my brothers and sisters, because this is what it's like to build community. I mean, to really build community. I mean, not just the surface thing we talk about as community, not just when we know each other's names and know each other's faces, but to really build community, especially when we are starting in a place of chaos. It takes maddeningly longer than we think it will once we get started. We think if we just come together and we have a few meals together and we pray together, sing a few songs, then community will form automatically, my brothers and sisters, but it doesn't happen like that. And sometimes, in some ways, the scripture text actually can interfere with our understanding of how difficult it is, because in this text, we see happening very methodically, day in and day out. The world is created from this place of initial chaos, and it begins at the beginning of Genesis 1 to the creation that is fully developed and ready to be turned over in just a few simple short verses, that we go from chaos to creation very systematically, day in and day out. And it can lead us to believe that replicating this process is simply as just putting a few days' work into creating this community, my brothers and sisters. But what I want just to warn you about is that even though in the biblical text this happens in a series of days, what I want to remind you that some days are just longer than others. Amen. Some days just take a little longer than the other days, my brothers and sisters. That there are some places we get to in the community building process once the edges are set in, and once we're beginning to work through the difficult pieces, that it seems like we don't get anywhere, that it seems like we are in a place where we're trying to get things to fit together that don't fit, or things that seem like they should make sense to us don't make sense to everybody else, and we're confused as to why it doesn't make sense for other people. We get into these day 5 places where the boundaries are set. The chaos has been removed from the atmosphere so that there is an air that can be breathed. Land has emerged, so there is a place to stand. There's vegetation that is now growing, and now it is the long journey to get from this place where there's some level of stasis to the place where community can be fully formed. And the frustration is, what do we do in this place? This, my brothers and sisters, is a summation of what the Christian journey is really like. We have an idea, like the box on the picture on the cover of the puzzle box. We have an idea of what we are looking for. We have this idea of what heaven looks like, this grand and wonderful idea where, whereas the old folks say every day will be Sunday, even though that didn't always sound great to me when I was a kid, because I didn't understand the value of Sunday historically. But they said every day will be Sunday. Everybody will be gathered together around the tree of life that is there by the river, and we'll be there singing praises to God all day. This wonderful place where everybody gathers together, and yet we live in a world that seems unable to even approximate what heaven looks like, my brothers and sisters. It would seem that after multi-thousand years of human existence, that we ought to be able to figure out at least how to get somewhere close to it. But it seems like in every civilization, in every government that arises, in every nation that is established, the best we can do is figure out how to replicate a different form and a different level of oppression. So we never really approximate heaven. We just redo oppression all over again, and it seems it's maddening. It's frustrating. The short course of my own life, I get frustrated because I think we ought to be further than we are, but we seem stuck in this same place. And what do we? This is what the Christian life is really all about, my brothers and sisters. It's why I appreciate now much more than I used to the songs my grandmother used to sing when I was a kid. She used to sing songs. She used to sing a song, "Trying to Make Heaven My Home." And I understand now what that trying means. We aren't quite there, but we're in this process of trying to make it. She used to sing a song, "I'm climbing up on the rough side of the mountain." And I didn't understand why she had to be on the rough side of the mountain. If there was a rough side of the mountain, there must have been a smooth side of the mountain. And if we're going to walk up, why not walk up the smooth side of the mountain? Well, I realized that this is what life is like. It is climbing up the rough side. She sing, "Lord, I'm running, trying to make 100. 99 and a half won't do." And I used to think 99 and a half will do just fine. If I got a 99 and a half on my exam, I'd be very happy. And celebrate that. That would be cause to shout, talking about 99 and a half won't do this. It's this understanding, my brothers and sisters, that the vision of heaven that is before us is so compelling and so powerful. It can also be so frustrating because we can't seem to grasp it. We pray, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." But we can't seem to live into that prayer. And so what happens, my brothers and sisters, what happens is we end up doing one of several things. One, we abandon the vision. We give up on the vision. The vision is too complicated. It's not possible. We can't possibly achieve that type of peace and harmony and love and justice. So we abandon it. This is a fairy tale. It's foolish. We cannot possibly live into this. We declare it an opiate for the masses, just a way to keep people docile. We abandon it as foolishness, as stories that we tell to children to keep them comforted at night. This is the way we abandon it because we think it's too impossible, and so we let go of the notion that it can ever exist. The second thing we do, my brothers and sisters, is we're tempted to declare early victory. We're tempted to celebrate before the game is over. I used to watch football. I used to watch it. I gave up watching the NFL when they decided that Colin Kaepernick can't get a job because he protested against the national anthem while they let everybody else who did all kinds of other horrific things get employment in the NFL. But the brother who's standing up for black folk can't get a job in the NFL. And I decided if that's the case, y'all just don't need my time, attention, or money anymore. So I'm boycotting the NFL from here on out. But I used to watch football, and when I used to watch football, I remember every once in a while there was somebody who was clear on their way for a touchdown. Sometimes it was a defensive back that managed to strip a quarterback and was running in the end zone. Sometimes it was a wide receiver who was faster than everybody else, and the quarterback dropped the ball right in the perfect place, not like our quarterback who seems to throw it behind the person, but drops it right in the perfect place when they're running, and they're by themselves, and the crowd is cheering, and everything seems like it's great, and they're on their way into the end zone with the football, and they drop it a yard early. They think they're in the end zone before they get there, and they just drop the ball early. And when they drop it early, all of a sudden now it's not a touchdown, but there's a defensive player who's been running behind them, and they take the football and go the other way. And what should have been a touchdown is not a touchdown because they celebrated too early. Sometimes this is what we do, my brothers and sisters. As we look at the picture, we think where we are is good enough. And so we celebrate as if we've made it when we really haven't made it. This is part of my critique about what has happened largely with the black community, particularly the black middle class community, with the election inauguration of President Barack Obama. It wasn't that the moment was worth celebrating. It was worth celebrating. It was a great historic moment. I remember Jesse Jackson standing there in Chicago in the park crying just weeks after he said that he was going to choke him or something. He said he was crying because of the historic import of the moment. I remember that day I had the flu. I was sneezing and coughing and had a 100-degree temperature and did not want to get out of bed, but I could not allow myself to stay in at that moment. And then somebody asked me later, Pastor, where were you when the president got elected? And I said, I was at home with the flu and I didn't go out. So I pulled myself out of bed. I wrapped myself in about 20 layers of clothes, went to the polling place, cast my vote, then went back home and got back into bed and watched the rest of it on television. I remember that day. I cried myself. I didn't even know I had that type of emotion in me to cry at a presidential election, but for something that I did not believe could happen to actually happen, to actually revolutionize the way I thought about what was possible in America. It was a profound moment. I cried, but it was not the victory. People said that the election of Barack Obama as President of the United States was the fulfillment of Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. And I asked the people, have you read the speech? Yes. Did you listen to what he said? Yes. Because never, not one place in the speech did he say, I have a dream that we will have a black man in the White House. He did not say that. It was not a part of the speech. And as great as the moment was, it was not the fulfillment of that dream. The dream spoke of a powerful picture of what American life should look like based on the great words that the founders wrote down that they couldn't live into themselves. It was a powerful vision. King's dream reminded us of the rich and deep promises of that vision and how unfulfilled they currently were, and celebrating that too early, my brothers and sisters. We took our eye off the game. Yeah. We dropped the ball on the 1-yard line. Really, we didn't. We really dropped the ball on the 50-yard line. We weren't even at the line. We dropped the ball way too early. And particularly our brothers and sisters who live in the most impoverished communities, the most isolated communities, the communities we drive by and drive through and don't stop in, the communities that we wish we could ignore, that we turn our backs on, the communities that people buy up only when there's economic interest in it, and then they kick everybody out who lives there and send them to other communities and then withdraw the services out of those communities. Those communities, my brothers and sisters, you know the ones that we're talking about. They're in right outside of downtown and right over yonder, and actually we are in one right now. These communities, my brothers and sisters, that people abandon and neglect until they can profit off of them, they take the brunt of our celebrating too early. The people in those communities are left out and left behind, my brothers and sisters. And so it raises the question within me that how do we deal with this conflict, this tension between a vision that we have that can be possible and the reality of human greed and the willingness to celebrate a little too early that makes it so difficult to get there. How do we live in this tension, my brothers and sisters? Now, some of us may not it may not be such a challenge to live in the tension. If I can be honest with you and transparent about myself, I actually love the tension. The struggle of it is where I find life in fulfillment. The truth is, if we won tomorrow and everything was great tomorrow, I would be bored on Tuesday. I wouldn't know what to do with the rest of my life. That I actually love the fight. So it's all right for me. But some of us, we don't really love the fight. We fight because it's necessary. We fight because we have to, but we don't love it. We wish it would end. And that's why we check out just a little bit early, because we don't really love the fight. We don't want to be in the fight. The fight doesn't bring life to us. It brings stress and strain to us. It's one of the reasons why black people have the health problems we do. It's not because we're so bad at taking care of ourselves or that we're worse than anybody else. It's because we live our life in this fight that takes a mental and emotional and physical toll on us and robs us of years of our life, my brothers and sisters, so that we are at the worst of the major health indicators in so many areas that the racism of America is literally killing us. It's part of the reason why reparations ought to be a real thing. It's not just because of what happened in the past, it's because of what's happening right now. But that's a whole other sermon for a whole other day. So how do we wrestle with this tension, being in this place of tension? So I believe, if you'll just allow my creative, theological, spiritual imagination to work, there's something in this day 5 moment that can help us. What I want you to understand, my brothers and sisters, is that before God created one living creature that walked on the land, before there was a human, a dog, a cat, a pig, a lion, a wolf, a cow, anything that walked on the land, the first living creatures that God created inhabited the sea and the air.
All right. Amen.
Now, I told you there wasn't going to be a shouting sermon, because that was the place to shout, but it wasn't. Before there was a creature that walked on the land, the first creatures inhabited the sea and the air. What are you talking about, brother preacher? Well, what I want you to remember is that the sea represents chaos, our lives. It's the sea that represents chaos. It's why when Jesus goes from the side of the river that his disciples lived on to the other side of the sea, brothers and sisters, that the storm arose, the chaos arose and made it difficult for them to travel from one side to the other. It's the chaos that arrives in our lives. It's why the river, why the Red Sea is the boundary between oppression in Egypt and the journey toward the promised land. It's because you have to get through the chaos. The chaos, my brothers and sisters, is what the water represents all throughout the biblical text. And God chooses uses, my brothers and sisters, I believe, to begin the creation of living creatures in the sea and then in the air, the place where the chaos once existed, where now there's the dome that keeps the chaos just above it, and just underneath it is where the birds fly in the air. So the first creatures inhabit the sea and inhabit the air, my brothers and sisters, because before we can get to the place of real community, before we can make the land inhabitable for people to walk on, before we can get to the place where there is a Sabbath day, where we can actually rest and enjoy what has happened, before we get to the place where there is real community, my brothers and sisters, first there must be life that exists in the middle of chaos. If we cannot create life in the middle of chaos, we'll never get to the point where we can inhabit the space that is not chaotic in a way that approximates God's justice, love, and shalom. Let me see if I can paint this from a historical perspective. Maybe it'll help you understand what I'm saying just a little bit better. You might remember, my brothers and sisters, if you're a student of history, that in the generation immediately preceding emancipation, in the time and place in United States history where the economic realities of the nation dictated that this nation could not survive being half slave and half free, that where the people who were crusading for emancipation had interrupted life so much that little battles were breaking out that turned finally into states seceding from the Union, which turned into a civil war, and many people were buried and lost their lives. Once we got to that place, that breaking point, where now emancipation was the law of the land, and the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution. Once we got to this place in United States history, my brothers and sisters, that did not balance the scales. So what we had was a group of people who were recently emancipated, who had been slaves, who had been forbidden by law from being able to read, who had been forbidden by law from being able to write, now trying to compete in a society where people who were reading and writing had an advantage, my brothers and sisters. And so they said, we need to do something. We need institutions that can educate people. And though emancipation was the law of the land, equality was not the law of the land, and equity sure enough wasn't the law of the land. And so many of the institutions, the educational institutions that were created, would not let people that look like you and me in to them, my brothers and sisters. We couldn't find places. We couldn't find places to worship, let alone to be able to go. So that's why we have a Black Baptist denomination and Black Methodist denominations. It ain't because we wanted to be separate, it's because we couldn't pray with everybody else. And so we had to create our own places to be able to pray and preach and sing, my brothers and sisters. And so we created these spaces, we created these institutions that operated in the middle of a still chaotic time, when just as soon as emancipation happened, then we started to have struggle over what was going to happen really in the South. My brothers and sisters, and at first we had federal troops that came down from Washington, D.C., dispatched from the federal government that said, we're going to make sure y'all don't know how to run y'all land, so we're going to run it for you and make sure that everything is fair and balanced. So for a minute, during this time of Reconstruction, we started to see things, the tide started to turn just a little bit. But then there was a presidential election. And history will tell us that in this presidential election, that the Republican Party of Lincoln, not the Republican Party of Reagan, has shown out the Republican Party of number 45, that the Lincoln Republican Party that had sent the federal troops down to make sure that things could progress in the South. They got into an election, and the election was contested. Both sides said they won the election. And so it was kind of reminiscent of 2000 and 2004, where both sides said that they won the election and they couldn't decide who would really won. And so the Democrats said that we're going to sue the Republicans for these election results because we think we really won the election. And so there was a meeting that got together behind closed doors and met, and they were trying to figure out how to settle this election business. And what the Democrats said is, look, we'll give you all the presidency. You all can have the presidency. Just take the federal troops out of the South. Let us figure out how to deal with our own race issues in the South. We don't need your help. And so the Republican Party sold out the people that had worked so hard to emancipate for one political office. And so they withdrew the federal troops. As soon as they withdrew the federal troops, we saw the laws begin to change. Now grandfather clauses and poll taxes and literacy tests began to be the law of the land, deciding who voted and who could not vote. What the carnage that we saw in movies like Rosewood that have been written about, my brothers and sisters, that decimated black cities. Cities that had been built, black businesses that had been built before Wall Street became the economic power and engine it was in the nation. There was a black Wall Street right outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma that was burned to the ground. Once the troops were removed, now the laws began to change, my brothers and sisters, and then set up this period of unprecedented lynchings that occurred that led up and through the civil rights movement, my brothers and sisters. Then people began to be arrested just for standing out on the corridor, vagrancy laws that they called it, my brothers and sisters. Then the people who were once praised for being the most industrious people, which is why we were brought over here in shiploads from Africa to America, not because we were lazy or worthless, my brothers and sisters, but because we were industrious and we worked harder than anybody else. Now the narrative began to change, and the hardest working people on the planet became the laziest people on the planet, my brothers and sisters, in an effort to change public perception, to allow the laws to pass, to put people in jail, to force them to work for free after they had just been emancipated from being forced to work for free. My brothers and sisters, all of this stuff happened, and so chaos still continued to exist, but in the midst of the chaos, we still built schools and colleges and universities. Churches were built, my brothers and sisters. We found a way to make small steps in the middle of the chaos because we would never be able to get anywhere close to a vision if we couldn't live in the chaos. Amen. There has to be life in the chaos in order to allow the possibility of there being life beyond the chaos. So my brothers and sisters, the question is, what do we do? How do we wrestle? How do we contend with life in the middle of the chaos? Well, there are three things I just want to lift up as possibilities. The first thing I want to say, my brothers and sisters, is that we have to be willing to neither demonize nor romanticize the life that emerges in the middle of the chaos. Because life in the chaos is problematic for the empire, because life in the chaos is hard to regulate at times, because life in the chaos tries to teach an ethos, a way of being that is counter to what the powers that be want and need in order for oppression to continue, because life in the chaos moves to the beat of a different drummer. My brothers and sisters, it is easy to critique and challenge and demonize the life that is in the chaos. For those very same reasons, it can be easy to romanticize it. Because it is so different, because it is so countercultural, my brothers and sisters. And so, if you'll just allow me to take just a snapshot of this cultural moment that we are in, one of the biggest television shows that is currently playing right now is a show called Power. Power revolves around the story of a man who they call Ghost. And Ghost is a very smart, charismatic, glorified drug dealer. the whole story is about Ghost trying to negotiate this space between the life he has built dealing drugs and wanting to step out of it, and being continually caught up in it and navigating his personal life, his family, and the life of the love he once had and lost back when he was in high school. All of these things that are happening are surrounding this person by the name of Ghost. And it is easy to romanticize Ghost and see him as a type of urban modern-day hero because he has power that does not emanate, that does not come from government structures. He has not sold out to the type of law enforcement that continues to kill black and brown people all across America, that he is outside of the rules. He is the glorification. He is Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man on steroids. He isn't just outside of the system, but he is prospering outside of the system. He's made it. He is rich and powerful and has done that purely by operating in an economy that is outside of the system. And it is easy to romanticize that image, that person, and that way of life. My brothers and sisters, it is also easy to demonize it because of the inherent violence and contradictions that are inherent in it, my brothers and sisters. It's easy to be on one side or the other, but what I am arguing is that there needs to be, we ought to find a middle ground, a middle way to be able to both critique the challenges within it and understand that it does not emerge in and of itself. It isn't because people want to be criminal, my brothers and sisters, but we live in a system where it's too easy for people to be criminal because it's too difficult to find a way to be legit. Tupac Shakur wasn't just talking out the side of his neck when he said, I'm trying to be legit, trying to pay the rent, trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. He is expressing a reality that too many people look at and see it's easier for me to be outside of this economy and provide a way of living than it is to struggle within the economy and not make enough to survive and feed my family. The contradictions, my brothers and sisters, they are real and they are challenging, and we have to be honest about them and think about how do we negotiate the life that is within the chaos. Allow me to just flip this and look at it from another perspective, my brothers and sisters, because all the life in the midst of the chaos isn't as problematic, but some of it is supposed to be good. At least our black churches and civil rights institutions are supposed to be places of hope. They're supposed to be places of leadership. They're supposed to be the places where we find vision, but even those can be problematic places at times. Even those can be challenging, my brothers and sisters, and it is so easy to escape what we think of are the traps and the challenges of life in black churches, of life in black institutions. It's so easy to abandon them because of the contradictions that are inherent in them and go to other spaces that are not black controlled and black run because they seem to be easier. They seem to be less challenging. Everybody there seems to be happy. And singing with their lattes and all these other things that are happening, my brothers and sisters. And so we glorify life on the other side. I heard somebody say, they say that the ice is cold on the other side. Isn't that what they say? So we go to these other places and glorify life on the other side because of the challenges that we have experienced in these institutions, my brothers and sisters. However, when the chaos of life emerges in ways that call our attention, that we are forced to be able, that we are forced to look at, and we cannot escape, then the institutions that we have run to are largely silent about those challenges because they aren't their challenges.
Well, Jesus.
And so we've been giving our life, our energy, our money to institutions.
Yeah.
We've been giving our life, our energy, our money. We've been buying their products and giving them love offerings and getting their prayer cloths and their books and their pamphlets and CDs and DVDs. We've been listening to them and gotten their theology inside of our system, my brothers and sisters, and we find ourselves praying to a God who doesn't even seem to be responsive to our condition, because the theology that we've gotten inside of ourselves does not have any power to speak to where we are, because it isn't built in context of where we are.
Right.
It is not for us,
Right.
because it is not by us.
Right.
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 That's right.
My brothers and sisters, what I'm saying is that we can't demonize or romanticize. The bishops of the AME Church recently wrote an open letter to the NAACP in which they said, look, you're facing the same challenges we're facing. We're not calling you out, so to say, but we just want to acknowledge that where you are is where we are as a denomination, and that is that we are struggling with irrelevancy. We've been so worried about protecting our existence, about romanticizing the way things used to be, the way it used to happen, the way we came up. We've been so interested in protecting our status quo that as the circumstances around us became so difficult that our status quo no longer spoke to it, we have worked ourselves out of relevancy. We've come to this place where we are no longer relevant, and now in trying to catch up and become relevant, we seem lost and scattered, and we don't know where to go, which is why we've seen leadership turnovers in the way that we have, because we can't be relevant when we've spent the last 20, 30, 40 years just trying to survive. It's the challenges, my brothers and sisters, of life in the middle of the chaos. So we can't demonize nor romanticize. Well, what do we do if we can't demonize and romanticize? My brothers and sisters, I want to press that we have to continue to be in relationship with the life that is in the chaos. We have to continue to be present and to critically wrestle with it. That we have to, it's why, my brothers and sisters, it's why it's been so important to me as a preacher and a pastor to maintain the integrity of Beloved Community Church's ministry and mission. It isn't because I haven't had offers to sell out, my brothers and sisters, but it's because I have to live with myself. And I have to stand before God and answer the heaven and history for what happens, my brothers and sisters. And so we have to maintain the relationship, a critical relationship with the institutions that emerge in the midst of the chaos. It's why it's important, why we've got to be more thoughtful, my brothers and sisters, about where we spend our money.
Amen.
It's why we need to be more thoughtful about what we buy and whose labels we're wearing.
Amen.
It's why we got to be more thoughtful about where we spend our time and energy, my brothers and sisters. Because at the end of the day, if we don't stand up and fight for ourselves, if we don't support ourselves, who will?
Right.
It's our institutions that have protected us, that created us, that nurtured us. Before Martin Luther King ever set foot on Boston University, it was Morehouse that educated him.
Yeah.
We've got to remember, my brothers and sisters, that before we had access to anything else, we created our own institutions. And when other institutions shut the door on us or miseducate us, it's our own institutions that provide the way forward, my brothers and sisters. We got to figure out a way, how do we engage in critical relationship with the institutions that created and nurtured us?
Yeah.
We must stay present, and we must stay active. We have to be intelligent and creative with our use of resources, our brothers and sisters, our time, talent, and treasure to advance the agenda. I never it was one of the greatest lessons to me in learning about my father. My father worked for IBM his entire time while he was here. It wasn't until after he died and after I went away and came back that I understood the level of my father's activity in the black community. Now, I know we went to a black church, we went to Southern Baptist Church, so I knew he was active there. He taught in marriage ministry, he was active in the children's and youth church there. I knew about that. But I was walking down the street one day, and a brother who's a police officer stopped me and he said, "Hey, you, come here. You look familiar. Your last name must be Pierce." I said, "Yeah, my last name is Pierce." He said, "You must be related to Nelson Pierce." I said, "Now, well, it depends on which Nelson Pierce you're talking about, because I am one of them, and the other one is my father." So, and he says, "No, I knew your dad. Your dad used to work at IBM." I said, "Yeah." I said, "How'd you know my dad?" He said, "Because your dad on Saturdays used to volunteer time at the Urban League. And I used to always see him there in the Urban League. And it was great to see this brother who had this afro. Your dad always had this afro. Come in his business suit and come and give his time. And he looked so professional, but he had this radicalness of the afro. And I looked and I thought, I want to be like that brother when I grow up." He said, and then he asked me how my father was. I told him my father passed on. He said, "I'm so glad to see you here. It's good to see you trying to live into the legacy of your father." That he found a way to support institutions that emerged and are tasked to deal with the chaos, my brothers and sisters. And it doesn't have to be everything we do, but it ought to be something that we do. It doesn't have to take all of our time, but we ought to take some of our time. My brothers and sisters, I believe that's what the biblical principle of tithing was supposed to teach us. Not just supposed to chain us or not just supposed to teach us to give to the church, which is important. We do have to give to the church, but also to remind us, my brothers and sisters, that there is something between all and nothing. That there is something between giving all of our time to something and ignoring it altogether. That we do have to make the decisions necessary for us to live. We do have to get employment and be able to get good paying jobs and hopefully have some kind of health care and retirement, and those things are wonderful, but that can't be all that life is.
Amen.
That we have to be able to devote some sort of time, talent, and treasure to the institutions that nurtured us, that created us, that have supported us, that will continue to stand up for us when we cannot stand up for ourselves.
Amen.
Neither demonize nor romanticize a life that emerges in chaos, and then stay in relationship to these institutions, to the life that emerges in chaos. The last thing I want to suggest, my brothers and sisters, is that we continue to use these, if you will, chaotic institutions. We continue to use a life that emerges in chaos to interrupt the status quo.
All right.
Because we won't get to, this isn't the journey from where we are, from the chaos we are in, to the shalom, to the beloved community that we believe is possible, will not happen automatically. This isn't just a case of waiting for people to become enlightened to a sufficient degree or educated to a sufficient degree. This isn't just a case of waiting for the goodness of people's hearts to be able to emerge naturally. It takes interruption to get there.
Amen.
The way forward has to be more difficult than the way of change. You know this from your own life. How many of us know that there are lifestyle changes that we need to make, but the way we currently live our life is just easier than the changes we need to make?
That's true.
And it isn't until a doctor says your blood pressure is too high, you have your health challenges are too great, that there's something else, some external pressure. We get a murmur, we get lightheaded, we pass out. Something happens that forces us to change because we realize the way we are on is going to lead to an early death, and we have to change in order to have life. Many of us don't change until we have to. It's too easy to get through the semester with only paying attention to the work while we're in class. And we know we need to do the reading outside of class. We know we ought to devote the time to doing reading and writing outside of class, but it's too easy to do other things once we leave the classroom. It's too easy to watch another series on Netflix, to spend time outside doing other things. It's too easy to do other things until it comes to exam time. I don't know how you all do it, but I know when I was in school that we would wait until exam time, and then the 48 hours before exam time, nobody slept. We just were up and we were studying until we were doing it, promising we would never do it again. We pray, God, if you get me through this exam, I promise, next semester I'm going to study, God. I promise. I'm going to do the work early, God. I'm going to read everything. I'm going to be ahead of the class, God. If you just get me through it, only to go through the same thing again the next semester. The road to change is difficult, my brothers and sisters. And normally it isn't until the road in front of us is more difficult than the road to change that we take change. And so if we think that if we just live long enough, pray hard enough, preach hard enough, that the world will change in the way it leads to, we are sadly mistaken. But the chaos has to be used to interrupt the system. Now, those of you who know me know I'm a peaceable person. I live my life in a very peaceful way. I hate conflict. I will deal with conflict when it emerges. But I don't like it. It's not the way I like to live. I like to be a peaceful person, my brothers and sisters. But I have commonly and repeatedly acknowledged, and will do so again and publicly, that Ferguson would not have happened. The Ferguson movement would not have happened if somebody did not decide to burn a quick trip. Now, that's not going to be me. I'm not the person that's going to burn a quick trip. Nor am I going to be the person saying people ought to go out and burn quick trips. But, my brothers and sisters, we would not be in a national conversation we are around Black Lives Matter issues if somebody hadn't done it. It was interrupting the way people live. All of a sudden now everybody in the world had to pay attention to it. And something that we knew was happening before. We knew that innocent black people had been killed at the hands of police. We saw it here in the early 2000s here in Cincinnati. We knew this was happening all around the nation, but the nation did not stop and pay attention to it until it stopped being just black people who were experiencing pain.
Yeah, that's right.
Until it was somebody's national business that was burned to the ground. Now all of a sudden CNN wants to come in and make this a 24-hour news cycle about what's happening to black people. The interruptions, my brothers and sisters. I remember when I was on the streets of Ferguson, I was out there, I was talking to members of a group. They called themselves the St. Louis Taliban. They said, Rev, all the gangs in the St. Louis area, we created a ceasefire. We said, what's happening with the police is bigger than any of us, so we ain't gonna shoot each other no more. We're gonna figure out what we're gonna do about this police issue. So they had aligned themselves and gathered themselves together. And so I was talking with them, and we were in conversation about what happened. And they said, look, we know every business in our community. We know which ones are owned by black people. We know which ones are not owned by black people. We know which ones we can go in and get good business at. We know which ones that if the black men go in, the people behind the counter will be mean and aggressive towards them. If the black women go in, the people behind the counter will be predatory towards them. We know exactly which businesses do what. And if we have to burn businesses again, we will, and we know exactly which ones we're going to burn.
Oh, Jesus.
And I said, well, look, I can't support you in the burning of it. But I at least am glad to know y'all got a strategy. And when we were out there in the midst of working together in the streets, some of us were recruiting people to come and register to vote, and other people were recruiting people to join the St. Louis Taliban. While we were out in the streets working together, the police started tear gassing all of us. All of us. Now, I could have done like some other preachers would have done. And I could have separated myself. I had a really derogatory thing I was going to say about those preachers. I had to pray the Lord to hold my tongue. I could have done what some of the other people would have done and separated myself and acted as if I was too holy to engage and work with these filthy, low-down sinners. I could have acted like that, but the fact is we were both getting tear gassed.
Yes. Yes.
The tear gas didn't have their name on it and not mine.
Oh, that's right.
My salvation didn't make my lungs able to deal with the tear gas any better than they did theirs.
Say that. Yes.
We were both facing the same conditions. And if we were going to get out of that situation, we needed each other's help.
Amen.
And so, out there in the middle of the streets, we learned how to work together very quickly. Some of us, we helped children and the elderly get into their cars safely. Told people to roll up their windows, put your air conditioner on. Don't let the air come in from the outside, but turn it so the air keeps on the inside so you don't get tear gas in your car while you're trying to drive out. Some of us were directing traffic so that cars could leave in a chaotic situation as orderly as possible so that traffic could get through. Others took the tear gas canisters that were being thrown and threw them back in order to try to buy some more time, create space for people to breathe. Others took concrete blocks from the Quick Trip that had been burned down and used it as roadblocks to stop the police from rolling over the people while we were trying to get everybody out. But all of us had to work together in order to get the people to safety, or else people would have been left behind. There, in the midst of that, my brothers and sisters, who we were or where we came from didn't matter as much as the objective we were trying to get to. And what I'm trying to say, my brothers and sisters, is that if we are going to get to the place of shalom, we have to recognize that the current structure is not shalom. It is a fake, false, idolatrous image of what shalom is, and we cannot allow it to stand. We have to be willing to interrupt it, because the kingdom of God cannot come to be as long as we are worshiping the idol that is before us. We have to be willing to disrupt the idol, to show the people that this God isn't God. If I hadn't been preaching so long, I would tell you about Elijah on Mount Carmel as he contested with the prophets of Baal over whose God was really God.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what we have to be willing to do, to stand up and to use the institutions, these institutions that come out of chaos, the good ones that we want to celebrate, even if they do need to change their name. Because don't nobody talk about colored people anymore, but the NAACP. The ones we want to celebrate, and the ones that we wish weren't in existence.
Amen.
We got to figure out how we can operate together for the interruption of this idolatrous community, so that we can create the community that we need.
Amen.
that God wants to bring to pass. We have a practice here at Beloved Community Church, my brothers and sisters. This is a part of how we live this out. Because we don't want to replicate the type of oppression that happens. So this isn't a community where I preach and that's just the end of it. But you have the opportunity to talk to and with one another, because who knows what you have to say to and with one another. There might be some truth in there that emerges that I may have missed. We put this into practice with one another, recognizing that all of our voices are important, that God does not just speak through me because I'm the one with the collar and the microphone, but that God speaks to each and every one of us.
Amen. Amen.
And so I'm going to ask you to put the revolutionary fire that God has put inside of you to practice. And talking with one another and say, this is what God is saying to me today. So would you just take a moment and ask God, what is it that you have for me? And when you found that, I want you to turn to a friend or neighbor and share with them what God is sharing with you today.